There are over 118,000 people that are currently, right now, as you and I speak, in South Africa's prisons. But how does being arrested and being in prison affect you and your spiritual life? Here to unpack all of that for us, very, very great detail that he's going to give us, is African spiritual advisor, Thokoza mkhulu.
Thokoza, ninjani?
Usaphila kehla?
Ukhala kusiza.
Kehla umuntu meboshiwe, kusuke kuyizenzo zabantu abadala yini?
Okay, so not to say what is izenzo zabantu abadala, but there's a spiritual contribution, right? There's two things we need to consider.
Yeah.
Number one, is this in umlando wasekhaya? Number two, at the time of conception, yena ubaba wakhe or uma wakhe were they arrested and azange bageze before conceiving them, right? And number three, have they themselves been in prison, mhlambe in a holding cell for a couple of hours, then baphuma ngaphandle kokugeza?
And this is information you wouldn't necessarily be privy to uma uhlangana nomuntu, whether umuntu wesilisa or wesifazane nihlangane nenkonzweni. It's not something that one would just easily tell you in casual conversation,
Not first date conversation.
It's not first date conversation, is it?
No, it's not. And we should be disclosing those kind of things, you know, if you're serious no muntu. And the reason why it is so important when it comes to knowing your family history and knowing whether or not you've been in jail. There's nothing wrong spiritually, right? Having been in jail. There's something wrong spiritually with not addressing why did I end up in jail, number one. Number two, ugeze mawuphuma ejele. Ngoba mawuya ejele, let's say you're going to prison for a petty crime.
Yes.
Right? When you're in prison, you are in prison with child molesters, rapists, murderers, serial killers. You know, if you are in prison with someone who's killed 15, 20, 30 people, raped 15, 20, 30 people, le mimoya of le dumbulez says shala like when. By virtue of the fact that you're sharing that space and living with them, you exchange spiritual energy. You know, hence in South Africa we have such a high rate of repeat offenders, because bayaphuma ejele, right, abagezi, and then baphinda babuyele. You know, but instead our correctional services doesn't look at it at with a spiritual lens as well, to say what's kahle kahle labantu laba.
What's the root cause?
Exactly. And abantu abaphupha the most, William, abantu basejele. Mina nawe siyaphupha, but abantu basejele bayaphupha the most. Reason being, at that point, right, there's no distraction. Abadala sebayakhuluma kamanje ukuthi yazi mfana wami unje nje la because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But because the people in prison, in the correctional facilities, they don't have access to spiritual healers and advisors and guides and prophets, it's all, let's just take the psychological approach. Let's just look at it from a socio-economic perspective.
Sure, pause it right there. I want to bring you in on this conversation, South Africa. Our WhatsApp line is open for you right now. It's 072 411 6528. Do you know anyone in your family or have anyone that you know who has been imprisoned? What have you done about it spiritually? Do you seek clarity or some answers? Our African spiritual advisor, Thokoza, is here with us to assist you with all of those answers. I know that a lot of us, in fact, from black families, as you were saying, Sia, have one or two people that we know in the family who have been incarcerated. I mean, are there spirits that can cause a person to commit crimes and criminal acts, as it were?
Okay. Are there spirits that can cause someone to commit crime? No, they are not. There are spiritual predispositions. Right? Difference between these two. There's actually nothing in this world that can guarantee William is going to commit a crime.
Yes.
But, right, depending on what you inherit spiritually, okay, that can cause a predisposition. Let me make an example, right? If wena ubabwako, right, to generate their income, right, was through crime, okay, there's a spiritual predisposition involved.
Okay.
At the same time, if your father is a cop and he is involved in the wrongful prosecution of criminals, then ukufundis isifundo abadala, to teach your father a lesson, right? Abadala, what the predisposition that has been created is for you to be a victim of izenzo zikababwakho. That's why I always say ukuthi we need to stop thinking ukuthi, but I'm fine, I'm okay. What we need to understand is that spiritual issues When abadala really want to teach you a lesson, they'll never do it through you. It'll be through abantwana.
It'll affect your children, and it hurts the most in that instant.
Exactly.
Does it not?
Exactly. That's why you hear some people say, but my dad is but I'm a lawyer, I'm an advocate. How is it possible that my son is the one committing crime? You need to ask yourself as a lawyer and advocate, what have you been involved in terms of the law to create that spiritual predisposition? See, we never asked ourselves, we don't understand that as parents, right? Whatever we do has spiritual outcomes, and that determines the predisposition that my children will inherit, you know?
Right.
So we don't actually say, what kind of culture am I establishing at home?
Because it will definitely filter down to our offspring, right?
And
inevitably through DNA.
Exactly. If you can understand genetic inheritance is no different to spiritual inheritance.
Sure.
If you can understand why Umkhulu had big ears or Umkhulu had big eyes and now why your son has big eyes, right? Then you must also understand that Umkhulu was wrongfully involved in the prosecution of people, so you must also understand why your child is a victim of that. Kanti kumele nigeze umkhulu, nixolise kumkhulu, sicela nimshwelezele umkhulu for the mistakes that he did or the mistakes that he did not complete, so that ingane yakhe iphume ejele. But we'll tackle other things as to what are the other spiritual causes that create the predisposition as well.
Absolutely. I mean, how can you identify, Sia, the spirit that is causing a person to continuously get arrested?
Okay. So let's say you get arrested, right? Uqala ngokugeza ngembuzi, igazi nyongomswane. Hlanganiswe emanzini ugeze emfuleni. Leyo mbuzi ayidliwa because isigeza isinyama esinzima lapho sasejele. Right? Then after ugeza, right? A big mistake people do is they stop there with ugeza. After ugeza manje kumele uhlole ekhaya ukuthi kahle kahle ikhehla or lesalukwazi that started lemkhuba le ubani exactly, right? William is an axe murderer, okay? Sigeza wena after you come back from jail, and also sigeza le dumbu. But if it's happening here, kusho ukuthi emndenini there was someone obebulela abantu lel khehla. So then what we do is we do a second cleansing, but now this second cleansing we all cleanse as a family.
Oh,
not just you. Exactly. So the initial cleansing is to help you.
Right.
The second cleansing is to remove the spiritual predisposition from the family. You see?
Yes.
So that's why mhlawumbe kunembuzo ezimbili. Yokuqala ugeza wena. Leyesibili sesigeza leli khehla namanye amakhehla. So therefore we all have to be involved and cleanse negazi nyongomswane as a family. But most people are like, how? But this is William's sin. Ngingena mina lapha. But we don't understand that you and William come from the same umsamo.
Yes, yes, and we share that DNA. And obviously, nalezo inhliziyo lezo ezikhuluma kanjalo ngemoya, uma sebefikile la bengekho supportive, kuyaye kunensise nezinto. Izinto zingahambi kahle, right? If there's someone who is resisting at that point or doesn't see the value or the point of it.
Not necessarily ukuthi uzobambezela umsebenzi, but I always say to my clients, if ukhona semndenini that doesn't want to participate, ngesikhathi niphahla senzocela phela abadala emphasis on isicelo ukuthi ngicela ningamshiyi ngaphandle phela upalisa.
Right.
Yabo? Engithi masenza umsebenzi siyaphahla sithi abantu abadala neba kamkhizi khiza kabazala gqaba kahlanje kubhela sesibiza ninaka bakaliphuzi, right? Wena phela indaba wena kwabamkhulu ozala ubaba. You see, all of those things, and then we say, okay, sekhona mina kusiyabonga, sekhona William, sekhona bazukulu, sekhona Subhanman, right? We have to name physically the people that we want to cleanse with this goat. And then we say, ningamshiyi ngaphandle phela upalisa, even though siyazi ukuthi akekho siyangicela bantu abadala. So you're pleading with the ancestors ukuthi they don't leave her out. They may or may not leave her out of the spiritual consequences, angazi, but all you can do is ask.
Kwenziwa njani ke ukuthi ke as umndeni kufanele manje ukuthi nezizukulwane zingaphinde nje zilibone ijele?
Okay. So if someone, let's assume mhlambe lo muntu bebamba inkonzi and then wadutshulwa and stuff like that, and now they've passed away and we're doing it post-mortem. The ritual remains the same, right? But senimenzela lembuzi le ukumxolela, umshwelezela on the other side, right? Okay. So it's not that he won't be punished or have to deal with the consequences of his actions on the other side, but we're saying ukuthi the process be a little smoother so that yena right? Angabuyi anihlukumeza la. Right?
Oh.
Because I need to remember he is acting in accordance with his spiritual predisposition that was happened from Ilinyi Kech back then.
Yes.
Right? So now they've teamed up.
Yes.
You see, you want to reduce the number of people that passed away in the family without having been cleansed after going to jail.
Right.
So we cleanse him, and then the second one, we cleanse emakhehleni in general, right? Or kuizalwazi in general, that we all as a family don't inherit, not necessarily that we don't inherit that spiritual predisposition, but we try quieting it down as much as possible. I think it's important that I say spiritual predispositions will always be there, right? The purpose of the cleansing isn't to remove them. The purpose of the cleansing is to say that which is in our genotype, our genetic makeup, doesn't physically manifest, right? But the best way to completely get rid of it is genetic diversity.
Okay.
To bring that which is not the same thing into the family. Hence, we say to people, ungathanda nomunye umuntu that is within your clan.
Right.
You see, because that's why everything in nature wants diversity, genetic diversity. We also want spiritual diversity. And I always say that sometimes the makoti that you're fighting that you don't want in the family, because they are going to help remove this spiritual predisposition and bring a different kind of genetic diversity. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, you're breaking it down, namhlanje kuseni. South Africa, let's bring you in on this conversation as well. I know you are anxious to ask your questions to Umkhulu Mkhize namhlanje kuseni. Let's roll the first voice note.
Morning, Sean. This is Leva from Bloom. And Kulubuza because I've been in prison before. So azange ngagezwa. So I just want to know, Ogoti, what are the steps that I need to follow? What am I supposed to do from there? Because I did not get cleansing at all.
That's a very important question, Sia. I mean, in terms of timelines and process, what needs to happen if umuntu beke wangena waphuma?
As soon as you get out, ideally it should be the day you get out, right? Ideally you shouldn't step foot ekhaya, right? Before ugeza. Literally, lokhuzana, bakqoshe lokhuzana ePaul's Mall.
Right.
Straight ehlathini,
Yes.
right? But that's the ideal. But if not, as soon as you find out, so now that she knows, she can either do it at home herself, but I would recommend that she sends us a DM so that, or she sends me a DM so I can send it to a healer. The reason I want to send it to a healer for this cleansing is I also want, one, her family might not necessarily believe in it, but two, and most importantly, I want to find out the
root cause
as well. So that when she goes back home, she can say, but nasi salwazi that also needs to be cleansed as well.
I like that. Let's roll the second voice note, please.
Morning, guys. I got this friend of mine from prison. Uqalwa lidlozi, uvukwa lidlozi the time eseseleni, ne? Then ngicela ubuza ukuthi nimenze enze njani umuntu osetrongweni make eqalwa lidlozi funeka ethwasile ebe eseseleni.
This is something you touched on. Inkosi kakhulu siswami for ivoice note yakho namhlanje kuseni ukuthi abantu abadala tend to speak to you the most because in jail, behind bars, there are no distractions.
The best thing she can do is she needs to get a sibling or a friend in worst case scenario to come see one of our healers, simhlolele, with a piece of her clothing, right, on her behalf.
Lo ngaphakathi.
Yes, lo ngaphakathi.
Right.
Then what will happen is thina sizokwenza lokho esikwazi ukwenza ukuthi aphume, right? Sesiyacela manje abadala, because what you'll find is that the root cause of ukuboshwa kwakhe is umsebenzi that can be done at home. Then thina we work with the family siwenze lo msebenzi so that yena akwazi ukuphuma. Mayisephumileke then siqhubeka nomsebenzi. But the first thing that we would need to do is get a friend, get a piece of her clothing or a shoe or a jacket or whatever the case may be. Come see one of our healers so that we can see, okay, fine, and then we can continue.
Let's close it up on this note then, Babsia. Obviously, this is an ongoing conversation because we know around this subject alone that we need to unpack, but we only have so much time allotted for this live segment. Can this person then be set free in the spiritual world, and how would that work? Just to emphasize on that point.
Okay, so can the person be set free in the spiritual world, what it would entail is if, okay, let me give you an example of what the causes are. If umuntu uyilongwe, mhlawumbe umuntu unomkhulu, right? Or kunomsebenzi kumele ukuthi athathe. But le khwama azithathile, right? Zingcoliswa ukusetshenziswa for crime. You see, right? Those are the two big ones, okay?
I get you.
If those are, so what we would do is we would cleanse you without you actually being there. And ngesikhathi siphahle sithi siyamenzela umntwana ehlele ejele. Siyacela abantu abadala ukuthi please accept, ngicela ukuthi nikwamukele lesithebe lesi esimgeza ngaye umntwana. Right? And then you have to see from there. Okay? But naye spiritual intervention is not enough to get you out of jail. Right? We can own, spirituality is 1/3 of your entire makeup. If you're still going to continue to behave poorly in jail, you know, at the end of the day, you need a holistic approach where we do get the psychologists and the social workers involved and couple that with spiritual intervention so that we don't have repeat offenders.